the biggest threat to your company's Q3 earnings isn't the current market volatility or, a broken supply chain or even a bad product line? What if it's actually your CEO's unaddressed childhood trauma?
Yeah, it's a really jarring thought, right? Because we're so deeply conditioned to believe that commercial success is built on just like absolute clinical precision.
Right, the whole binary mindset. You want higher margins, you cut costs.
Exactly. You want sales, you boost the marketing budget. We all want our business metrics in this neat little dashboard.
But, I mean, the reality of the modern workplace operates entirely outside that dashboard. We're dealing with human emotion, really complex team dynamics, massive cognitive load, and, burnout.
Oh, absolutely.
And when you try to apply these mechanical fixes to a highly sensitive, organic ecosystem like a human workforce, the culture doesn't just bend, it fractures.
Which is exactly why we're doing a deep dive today into some amazing insights from a 2026 panel discussion. This was at the International People and Culture Week, or IPCW26.
Yes, looking specifically at UK-based business leaders.
Right, these culture executives who are actively dismantling those old school command and control frameworks.
And just to be clear, we're not talking about superficial perks here. We're not looking at ping pong tables or forced corporate fun.
No, definitely not.
Our mission today is to extract the highly specific, actionable strategies these executives use to balance hard commercial success with profound human empathy. We're cutting through the jargon to see how top leaders manufacture genuine joy, handle conflict, and build high-performing teams without burning people out. Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the very foundation. What does joy actually look like when it's deployed as a corporate strategy?
Well, to understand the mechanics of that, we have to look at Emmy Rumble Metal. She's the chief people officer at Aristocrat.
Oh, her trajectory is fascinating.
It really is. She's completely transparent about it. She started her career operating on that classic corporate incentive model, chasing the money. She wanted the maximum salary, the best title, the fastest promotion track.
Like the ultimate Wall Street-style origin story.
Precisely. But the psychological payoff just wasn't there. By the time she was 23, she had the high salary, she had the flat in London, and she described feeling completely empty, like she had, quote, sold her soul to the devil.
Wow, at 23, that's quite a realization to hit that early.
Yeah. She realized that extrinsic motivators, like the financial bonuses and titles, they have severe diminishing returns. What actually sustained her focus was intrinsic motivation, giving back, connecting with people.
Right.
So her core strategy now at the executive level is literally sitting down with employees and asking them one highly disruptive question. Where do you find your joy?
That question completely disarms the standard corporate defense mechanisms. I mean,
Right.
you expect to be asked about your 5-year plan, not your joy.
Exactly. But she's also quick to clarify her persona.
Yeah.
She describes herself as warm as toast, hard as nails.
All of that.
She's proving that compassion isn't about handing out tissues and offering tea and sympathy. It's about driving commercial strength through fulfilled people.
Because the underlying mechanism there is biological, right? As much as it's psychological.
Oh, 100%. When a person genuinely aligns their personal joy with their daily tasks, their brain isn't burning energy on resistance or stress management. They enter a flow state more easily, they're more resilient, and they just create more value. It becomes a strategic imperative.
And we can see how this scales when we look at another panelist, Joanna Phillip. She's the head of people and culture at Vorbos.
Yes. She guided a massive scale-up, taking a company from just 16 employees to 400.
Which is wild. Scaling a company by that magnitude in such a short time frame usually just shatters the existing culture, the informal bonds break, and bureaucracy takes over.
Joanna's first strategic move to prevent that was linguistic, although it had profound structural impacts. She renamed the Human Resources Department to the People Department.
Think about the traditional framing of human resources for a second. It always felt like a mechanic fixing broken parts on an assembly line.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Right. An employee breaks down, HR patches them up or swaps the part out, and the machine keeps running. But this people approach shifts the paradigm. It's more like an ecologist. You aren't fixing cogs. You're analyzing the soil acidity, the sunlight, the water levels, making sure the whole environment is calibrated so the forest can grow organically.
What's fascinating here is how Joanna ensured the ecology wasn't just corporate lip service. She embedded people-first metrics directly into the commercial KPIs of the executive team.
Wait, really? So the CEO and senior leaders were literally graded on cultural health, not just revenue growth.
Yes, exactly. They tied human joy directly to the incentive structure of the boardroom. By doing that, you force a company to treat compassion as a hard business strategy.
That's incredible.
And we saw the tangible output of this during COVID. Joanna's team built a fiber academy. Instead of hunting for pre-trained tech workers in a crazy competitive market, they specifically hired and trained locals from East London who had lost their jobs in other sectors.
And didn't they prioritize diversity there too?
They did. They rewrote their job descriptions to remove exclusionary language, and they achieved a 30% female workforce in broadband installation, which is a notoriously male-dominated field.
Which just proves that looking at the human being first, rather than treating a resume like a spec sheet, actually expands your talent pool.
Yeah, definitely.
But if joy and this people-first ecology are the foundation, we have to look at what destroys it. According to the panel, the biggest roadblock isn't macroeconomic factors. It's the psychological baggage that leaders drag into the office every morning.
This is where Alan Wilson, the Director of People and Operations at On Security, offers a really deeply uncomfortable truth. Following a period of intense personal grief, Alan realized that the workplace is frequently just an arena for the expression of unprocessed childhood attachment issues.
Okay, let's define that. Because unprocessed childhood attachment issues sounds like a phrase that belongs on a psychiatrist's couch, not in a board meeting.
True. In a practical sense, it means that if a leader grew up in an environment where affection or safety was conditional on perfect achievement, they will unconsciously recreate that exact dynamic in the office.
I see.
Yeah. They'll demand absolute perfection to feel internally safe and mask their personal anxiety as having high standards.
I have to push back here a little on behalf of everyone listening who is, staring down a massive Q3 earnings target. Is the boardroom really the right place for this level of deep psychological excavation? I mean, we still have to hit targets, and we can't pause operations to analyze everyone's inner child.
Well, it's not about doing therapy at work. It's about recognizing the commercial fallout of unexamined trauma. When a leader lacks self-awareness, their ego and their fear of failure run the meeting. They handle complex human dynamics by triggering a fear response in their staff. Biologically, they are pumping the office full of cortisol and adrenaline.
And we know from a neurological standpoint, when the brain is flooded with cortisol, it triggers an amygdala hijack.
Exactly.
It shuts down the prefrontal cortex, which is literally the part of the brain responsible for creativity, nuance, and complex problem solving. So a toxic manager isn't just making people sad, they are actively lowering the cognitive capacity of their entire team.
Precisely. And Alan counters this by employing extreme vulnerability. He mentions stepping up to speak to his team even when his voice is audibly wobbling from nerves or emotion.
Wow, that takes guts.
It does. By showing that fragility, and not just performing the role of an infallible corporate robot, he triggers mirror neurons in his team. He gives them permission to drop their defensive walls.
And dropping those walls translates directly to operational speed. Look at how Alan rolled out artificial intelligence at his company. He knew AI triggers existential workplace dread, that fear of obsolescence.
Right. His strategy was setting clear fear-reducing principles from day one. He made it explicitly clear that AI was a tool to augment the worker, not a mechanism to replace them.
So by addressing the emotional truth first, he neutralized the resistance.
Yeah. One of his employees felt safe enough to innovate and ended up using AI to automate a process that saved 28 days of annual work.
Unbelievable.
That is an entire month of recovered labor, all because the leader managed the emotional landscape.
Okay, so we have self-aware executives at the very top, but the reality is the C-suite isn't interacting with the bulk of the workforce every single day. The entire culture actually lives or dies with the middle managers.
Oh, completely.
They're caught between the intense financial pressures coming down from the top and the really complex human needs bubbling up from the bottom. That sounds like a terrifying bottleneck if they aren't trained properly.
It is the ultimate failure point for most corporate cultures. Ruth Papadakis, the head of people and culture at Amazon Filters Limited, addresses this with a simple mantra. Culture isn't accidental, it's intentional. You have to engineer the machinery for compassion. So her company launched a development program specifically for middle managers called Communicating with Compassion.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The brilliance of this program is what Ruth decided to completely ban from the curriculum. She banned corporate role plays.
Thank goodness.
Right. We all know the agonizing awkwardness of being told to pair up and pretend to be an angry customer while everyone watches.
It fails because of the psychological mechanism at play. When you force a manager into a role play, their brain treats it as a performance. It triggers the sympathetic nervous system. They're hyper-focused on not looking foolish in front of their peers,
Hmm.
so their capacity for authentic empathy completely shuts down. They're acting, not connecting.
So to replace that artificial environment, Ruth utilizes Lunch and Learns, where managers talk through live, real-world scenarios in a psychologically safe space. They unpack actual problems they're currently facing.
Yeah.
And the core strategy she teaches is the power of admitting imperfection. She trains managers to sit down with an employee and literally say, I don't know how to approach this, but I think it's worth us having a conversation.
Which is an absolute masterclass in tactical empathy.
Yeah.
It completely subverts that old-school mandate that a manager must always project absolute certainty.
Right.
By giving managers explicit permission to be human, she diffuses the paralyzing fear of saying the wrong thing. Right now, across the corporate landscape, managers are so terrified of stepping on an HR landmine that they avoid difficult conversations entirely.
Because they think if they use the wrong terminology, they'll end up in a tribunal. But by just being honest about their uncertainty, they build trust. It stops minor interpersonal friction from festering in the dark until it explodes into a formal grievance.
But, even with highly trained managers, friction is inevitable. People will clash. The panel tackled the critical question of how to handle those inevitable disputes without reverting to cold, punitive policies.
Yeah, the consensus on that was a real wake-up call regarding how we view discipline. Traditional grievance policies are inherently adversarial. They operate on this courtroom model: who committed the infraction, who is guilty, and what is the prescribed punishment to protect the company's liability. It's entirely focused on retribution.
Emmy Rumble Metal's strategy for conflict offers a radical pivot here. Her baseline rule is suspend judgment. There is no right, there is no wrong, there just is. Instead of acting as a judge delivering a verdict, she acts as an investigator of human behavior.
So she's looking for the root causes of the friction. Like, is this person acting out because of unaddressed neurodiversity? Maybe the working environment overstimulates them and causes them to shut down? Or are there blind spots created by personal privilege causing a breakdown in communication?
Exactly.
The entire focus shifts from punishing an infraction to repairing the relationship.
And Allen reinforced this by citing Gabor Mate, the physician who studies addiction and trauma. Mate's foundational principle is, don't ask why the addiction, ask why the pain. Allen brings this directly into the corporate sphere. When an employee is underperforming or creating conflict, a compassionate leader doesn't ask why are they breaking the rules. They ask, what is the pain driving this behavior?
Think about your own workplace for a moment. When a colleague drops a massive project or snaps at a team member, is your management's first instinct to point fingers, establish a paper trail of blame, and penalize? Or is the instinct to ask, what is the pain causing this?
Kimberly Holden, another senior people leader on the panel, roots her approach in humanistic psychology. She specifically references the work of Carl Rogers.
Oh, right, from the 60s and 80s.
Yeah. It's the radical idea that people are inherently good and driven to actualize their potential. They aren't malicious cogs that need to be policed. They are complex systems that sometimes misalign. So she advocates that organizations must build authentic relationships based on deep, empathetic listening rather than relying on surface-level, policy-led interactions.
But does a trauma-informed policy actually hold up in an employment tribunal? Or does it just sound nice? I can hear the compliance officers screaming that we need rigid rules to protect the company from legal liability.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, compliance and compassion don't actually have to be mutually exclusive. The panel's moderator highlighted how technology is bridging this exact gap. You can utilize AI to draft policies that are fully legally compliant, but you prompt the AI to write them through a restorative lens.
Wow. So you feed the hard legal requirements into the system, but you instruct the AI to use language that focuses on repair and growth.
Okay.
You maintain the legal teeth of the document, but you strip out the adversarial, threatening tone that instantly pushes employees into a defensive posture.
It changes the linguistic environment without sacrificing protection. It's brilliant. To synthesize all of these strategies, the panel was asked to define the specific superpowers required for the future of corporate leadership.
And if you look at the powers they selected, there is a really fascinating pattern. Emmy chose suspending judgment. Ruth chose future insights, the ability to predict tomorrow's stress to prepare your people. Kimberly chose balance, managing the extreme pace of modern business to prevent mass burnout.
Yeah, and Allen chose intuition, trusting the mind-body connection to cut through cognitive load. And Joanna chose hearing what is not being said, listening for the silence in a meeting that indicates a lack of psychological safety.
Notice how none of those superpowers are about speaking, dictating, or asserting dominance. They are entirely about reception and calibration. It's a complete reversal of the loudest voice in the room wins executive archetype.
So true.
So what does this all mean? It means we are moving away from a rigid architectural blueprint of leadership, where every human has to fit perfectly into a pre-drawn box, to a navigational system that constantly recalculates based on live human variables. For decades, we labeled intuition and empathy as soft skills, treating them as optional corporate luxuries. But this panel proves that these are the ultimate hard skills required to drive commercial success in a complex world.
This raises an important question for you, the listener. How might you actively cultivate just one of these specific receptive superpowers in your own daily workflow? Like, in your next team meeting, could you practice listening for what isn't being said? When a colleague presents a flawed idea, could you intentionally suspend your immediate judgment to explore their underlying logic?
Because cultivating these skills isn't a philanthropic endeavor, it's the engine of the bottom line. That is the core thesis we've extracted today. Leading with joy and compassion doesn't require ignoring commercial realities. It requires abandoning your defensive judgments, doing the uncomfortable inner work to recognize your own baggage, and intentionally designing a culture rooted in trust.
Because if that trust isn't there, all the optimized dashboards, aggressive KPIs, and perfectly written policies will inevitably collapse under the sheer weight of human burnout.
I want to leave you with a powerful thought brought up by the panel's moderator right at the close of the session. It's a metaphor that perfectly distills the mechanical reality of leadership, he noted. The air that managers breathe out is the air that others breathe in.
The micro-expressions, the underlying anxieties, the processed or unprocessed trauma of a leader, that becomes the literal atmosphere of the workplace.
So tomorrow morning, when you log onto your first call or when you walk into the office, ask yourself, what kind of air are you breathing into your organization? Are you exhaling fear, rigid compliance, and unexamined stress? Or are you exhaling understanding, tactical empathy, and genuine joy? Because whatever you are breathing out, your team has no choice but to breathe in.